What's up? What's up?
Yo. What's good, fam?
Satnin.
What's up? What's up?
Man, a lot is happening. Well, first of all, kudos to Miss Mims in the house. Salute definitely to you and Chris. Today we had a historic victory.
Yes.
Little pebble in the ocean, but it was historic. Shall we get into that a little bit before we jump into the topic of this evening?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so we were going to do our debrief here, huh, Chris? We never got a chance to chat afterwards, but the city council here in Sacramento presented us with a resolution for our work on AB 3121 and our grassroots advocacy work that we've been doing. So, it was nice to be acknowledged. Nice to be acknowledged.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
There you go. Booyah.
Definitely. Thank you, Kim. Obviously, thank you to everybody who helped too, who was a part of this. This is not over. Obviously, we still got a lot more to do, but definitely shout out, especially everybody that's listening. If you were a part of this or who's going to listen later, super thank you. And we've got more to do. Definitely check us out. We are having a community meeting about the task force, about California reparations here in Sacramento on the 26th of June. Here, I believe it's at 2 p.m., and that's a Saturday, and we're going to do it in Oak Park. There'll be a link somewhere dropping, I'm sure, and come through and join us. But thank you for everybody's work, and I can't wait to see what we do next.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely. So were there any surprises at the council presentation? It seemed like everybody had positive things to say and seemed to concur with the fact that this is long overdue. We just need to, make sure it's not lip service and hold them accountable to their support and our efforts.
Yeah, one thing I thought that you brought up was really good, Kim, was that, there could be ideas that people who are either on the council or, maybe even in city departments have about reparations in terms of proposals and ideas. I thought those, I think we want to follow up on some of that, because that is part of the work of the task force, right? That's really what we're all looking forward to, right? That's really what we're all looking forward to, right? Is the concrete, hey, this is what you should do. So that stuck out to me. I liked the unanimousness of the vote. I like the fact that they took a vote, even though they didn't have to. Okay. I also liked the fact that we got a lot of positive comment and positive feedback, as you said, and this really was fast tracked, right? This really came faster than we thought it was going to go, right? We thought it was going to be like going into long legislation committee and then, having to do more conversations with city council members. But this was really pushed forward. And I do want to shout out to the offices of Katie Venezuela and her team for really opening the door for us, really, and making sure that we had support to start.
Yes. Oh, I feel the same way. And Michelle out of Katie's office, she has just really been a rock star, getting back to us lightning fast. And I'm like, oh, wow, she already checked in on this. So, yeah, I think it's been a positive experience with the city so far. But like I said, we just got to make sure that it's not just lip service. So
right.
with that, you were going to say something, Umoya?
Well, before we get actually into, I think we're going to go to the news, right?
Yes,
Okay.
We're going to see what's in the news.
We'll probably show this again later, but yeah, that is the flyer, ladies and gentlemen. If you are in Sacramento, come join us on the 26th of June. If you are in Sacktown.
Yeah, we're going to try to get that stream virtually also. So hopefully we'll have a virtual audience. But since California opened up today, we'll be talking about that also in the show. Hope to see you guys in person. And now for In the News.
All right. So in the news, rest in power to Twins pitcher or former Twins pitcher Jim Mudcat Grant. He passed away at 85. He is remembered for a home run he made during the
season in China as a penalty for doing so. On Thursday, Beijing passed a sweeping law designed to counter U.S. and EU sanctions on Chinese officials and major Chinese companies.
Malema has picked, quote-unquote, a fight with France. Malema spoke about the chaos witnessed at the Pan-African Parliament, PAP, last week. The meeting drew criticism after physical altercations and persistent disruption.
President Trump's call to protest the result of presidential election. Some defendants wore tactical gear, and at least one prosecutor said carried a knife while he pushed past police line on Capitol grounds.
The proposed legislation could force them to overhaul or even break up their increasingly dominant business empires. The package of 5 antitrust bills introduced by a bipartisan group in Congress on Friday aimed at Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google's parent Alphabet.
Stuff in. Okay, what else is going on? Jeff Bezos will go to space on Blue Origin's first crewed flight. The multi-billionaire, with a B, along with his brother and at least one other passenger.
Put in the COVID bill was for, and this is part of what you get when you have these people of color type of policies, and you don't have policies that are rooted really in.
Central to democracy, Attorney General Merrick Garland affirmed Friday the expansion of voting rights as a central pillar to American democracy. Truly an emergency. How drought returned to California and what lies ahead just 2 years after California celebrated the end of its. This is Indigency Guidance to Reduce Risk. California is preparing to get back to normal on June 15th. Capacity and
some of the key points is going to be retirement, stimulus state tax rebate, homelessness, mental health systems, housing, public education, broadband, jobs and infrastructure, climate change, government and digital transformation, criminal justice, and immigration integration.
Salad after complaining of co-workers using N-word. Zanara James is suing the Madison Heights restaurant.
It looks like Showtime was having some issues with the fight. It looks like some servers were crashing throughout the paper. The Emenda Mass Media Group looks like we're going to be working on a program called the Political GOAT, the greatest of all time. Yes, with the one and only, Mr. Chris L. himself. And we're back.
We're back.
We are back in the house. A lot going on in the news as usual, including California's comeback plan, which is what we are here to talk about today. Let's start by taking a look at what Governor Gavin Newsom has to say.
Thank you, everybody, for the privilege of your time and the opportunity to present what is commonly referred to as the May revise of this fiscal year's projected budget that I'll be submitting to the legislature shortly after the close of this press conference. I want fiscal year ending 2022, a balanced budget we are submitting to the legislature of $267.8 billion, the general fund roughly $197 billion. I am pleased to announce that this budget builds on a strong fiscal foundation, one that allows us to set aside even more resources for reserves, now record high reserves, $24.4 billion. You'll see referenced in slides This slide, about $16 billion in the rainy day fund, a school stabilization reserve. This is remarkable, $4.6 billion in our school stabilization reserve. You may recall just a few years ago, there was no money, there was no reserve. In fact, someone speculated we would never see reserves in that account. We're setting aside $4.6 billion in that school stabilization reserve. You'll see the operating reserve at $3.4 billion and a safety net reserve of $450 million. $24.4 billion, the highest reserves in states' history. We're doing something few other states in the nation have done. We're using general fund to pay down long-term obligations to STRS and PERS, unfunded healthcare pension liabilities, long-term liabilities. These retirement liabilities, we're committing $10.9 billion, close to $11 billion to pay down these liabilities, $3.4 billion in the next fiscal year, and then $7.9 billion over the budget period, that 3-year period that we'll be talking a lot about in this budget presentation. So highest reserves in states' history, and using portions of the surplus, which I'll announce in a moment, to pay down long-term obligations.
So $1 billion there, here, $1 billion there.
What's a billion to billionaires?
And $1 billion everywhere. Seems like we rhyming right now.
I know. I'm about to say we about to put together another verse. Yeah.
Okay, so $267.8 billion for a balanced budget and $1.968 billion for the general fund. So we're looking at
quarter of
that.
$1 trillion. And so our state's budget is $250 billion plus. So that's our state's budgeted spending for the year proposed by Gavin Newsom, and we're going to talk more about this in detail and also give folks the reparations perspective. I also want to give folks the reparations perspective of this too, right?
Please do.
Yeah, what's this mean? And as we go forward, I'll try to be piecing that in as we go through the different parts of the community comeback plan, which is the topic of today's ETM Media Group community call-in. Folks, please do also call in. I know the number is going to be somewhere in the crawl at some point, so please do call in. And also, if you didn't see us on the YouTube live just before we came on today, please do check out the video that we just did and put up the live video of our Sacramento reparations resolution. Okay, let's go.
All right. Let me see. Let's see what's on this plan. Strong fiscal foundation, $24.4 billion reserves. That's a record high. There's a $15.9 billion rainy day fund deposit, $4.6 billion school stabilization reserve, $3.4 billion operating reserve, $450 million safety net reserve.
So Kim, real quick here, so folks should know, right? We're talking about big money, and this is what the state is saying about itself. It's saying, hey, we have a really strong foundation financially. Think of the word fiscal as financially, right? So we have a really strong financial foundation, right? We've got $24 billion in reserves. Okay, so just reserves, and that is a record high. And then we're making additional deposits into our already existing rainy day fund, right? And then we're also making the deposits in all the other reserves that we have as well. So that this talk by Gavin Newsom was really announcing to California, and on this day, today is what, the 15th, so California is opening back up, right? Today all the masks come off, right? Or maybe not all the masks, but a lot of them, right? So this is coming at a time when California is seeing all this fiscal strength. So there's a lot of potential, and I know we're going to talk more about the potential ways to spend this money. And I want people to think about this as we're talking about the California Reparations Task Force, right? Like, there's got to be some money ultimately at the end of what we're doing. So, in terms of the questions of where does money come from, pay attention, okay? Because we're going to get a lot of answers tonight.
What's up, family? I think Kim, you're on mute.
Yeah, can we? If you're talking.
I was over here talking out loud to myself. Okay.
No worries.
So, strong fiscal foundation, 10.9 billion retirement liabilities, 3.4 billion additional payments, 2021, 2022, and 7.9 billion over the next 3 years. So what does that mean for retirees?
So so the state of California has a really big budget or amount of money that it spends on, obviously, the retirement packages and benefits for all of the state employees that we have, right? And there is a big amount of talk about that. Usually, as a matter of fact, we actually have a lot of talk about that here in the city of Sacramento, because the city of Sacramento obviously has employees too, right? So we have similar problems and similar issues. But we'll see, right? You know, this, for the fact that we have a lot of surplus says to me that there could be, you know, a lot of use of that on our retirement liabilities and actually funding those liabilities, which is a constant problem for not just states, but local governments too. And this is something that, you know, we don't talk a lot about, but a lot of us, and, you know, Black folks, right, we work for the government a lot, you know, in some way, right? And so this is particularly important to Black folks because one of the biggest employers of Black folks is the government, outside of, you know, other Black folks, and then, you know, the rest of the job market. So this is something that we want to pay attention to. And, you know, for those of us who are government workers, you know, this is something that is going to be important if this plan actually happens. And we're going to talk about whether or not this plan is actually going to happen.
Okay. And if it happens, it looks like there'll be some additional payments involved with that too, to the tune of $3.4 billion. So let's take a look at a couple of other videos on what Governor Gavin Newsom has to say.
Of climate change. Let's talk about the immediate relief package. Close to $12 billion, the largest state tax rebate in American history. No state, including this state, has ever rebated more direct dollars back into the pockets of taxpayers, earning up to $75,000. 2 out of every 3 Californians will receive at least a check of $600 once they file their taxes. This is a good inducement and incentive to file your taxes on Monday to get a direct stimulus check directly back if you're in that income bracket. Roughly 2 out of 3 Californians are. 78% of all tax filers, close to 80% of tax filers, will be eligible for that direct relief. Families with dependents will receive an additional $500, just one time, not per child, $500 check, and I-10 filers, regardless of their immigration status, will receive an additional $500 as well, for one reason. It's the right thing to do, and the federal government was not able to provide those supports. The state of California will step in to do what we can. Others to work through a process to develop a strategy to provide 100%, our commitment and our proposal to pay 100% of people's back rent for the last year or so, and to provide supports going forward for the next few months or so, and help support them by paying down their utilities, past due water bills, power and electric, power/electric and gas bills as well. So $2 billion of relief in that space. $1 billion of that $2 billion directly set aside to deal with water bills. The $5.2 billion federal dollars coming in to support our renters. And again, cannot thank the leadership in the Assembly and Senate enough for the work they did on the first $2.6 billion of this $5.2 billion package. We have more work to do to get from 80% to 100%. That's what we're proposing in this budget and proposing to the legislature. We're adding the $2 billion of direct relief for additional support for water, power, and gas, and providing a historic amount of money for stimulus dollars, the $27 billion, to direct $300 million to provide traffic fine forgiveness. A lot of debt that has been owed for fines and fees associated with traffic fines. This is for low-income Californians that accrue this debt, and we believe deserve the benefit of these supports considering the stress and the travails of the last year. These are for tickets going back even pre-pandemic, but through this year to June 30th. Of 2021. The answer to the question is who's eligible. The Judicial Council will make that determination. The Judicial Council will ultimately manage this program. They'll be putting out rules and regulations once the legislature considers this proposal and hopefully adopts and supports that proposal. Issues, again, pre-existing issues that obviously drive.
Okay, so it looks like some immediate relief is coming.
Potentially, right? So let's put this in context for the family. So this is the proposal, right? So this is what Gavin Newsom wants in the budget, right? And the budget process is actually something that we don't talk enough about, I think. And let me actually take a minute, if y'all two don't mind, to talk a little bit about the budget process at the state level, right? And I'm just gonna go through a couple of points that actually are very public, and actually you can look at them yourself. This is from Cap Radio, and I'm happy to drop the link in the chat in a second. But let me talk quickly about the budget process. So the proposal that you're looking at right now and that we are talking about is these are the governor's spending priorities, but these are not the final product. And in terms of process, the state constitution requires the governor to submit a balanced budget proposal by January 10th every single year. Newsom did that this year on January 6th. And then by May 14th, the governor usually prevents something called the May revise. And that's what you heard Gavin Newsom say in the beginning. Hey, this is the May revise, right? And this is just a revised version of what he usually submits, or what any governor would usually submit in the beginning of the year by January 10th, right? So this is the May revise, and then the legislature itself, the Senate and the Assembly, have until June 15th, so until I believe like today, to actually approve a budget, and then I believe they have until June 20th. We all have until June 20th to get the budget signed by the governor. If that doesn't happen, guess what happens? I actually want to put this out there to the people watching and people listening, and who are going to watch and who are going to listen. What do you guess happens if California doesn't do a budget by the legal date that California is supposed to do a budget? What do you think happens? Kim, Moya, do you have any ideas?
Goes back to the drawing board.
Okay, good guess, Moya. What's up, fam?
I think you're muted, Betty.
All right. Well, you're gonna have to ask that one more time, bro.
What do you think happens if the California legislature doesn't submit a budget, or we don't pass a budget by the legal deadline? What do you think happens?
Well, I think either it has to go back and to be voted again in the next round, or that money is going to go into the coffers of African Americans.
Okay, now you talking, right? So what actually happens is the legislators actually lose or forfeit their salaries. Okay.
Really?
So this was a 2010 constitutional change, and I guess here in California, I wasn't in California at that time, but I guess y'all got mad. And
that must have been when everybody was going through the furlough Fridays, and the whole government shut down.
Sound like it. Yeah, sounds like it. And so that's what happened. So the legislature actually did pass a budget. I believe it was yesterday, and there's still no deal yet, from what I understand, with the governor, because obviously the budget has to become law through the signature of the governor as well. So we're still waiting on that. But I did want to give the family just a little bit of context about how some of this works.
Okay, so they can come back and tell him to make some revisions to his budget, and then he'll have to go back and slash out some stuff. So this is in no way final. Could look very different.
Well, it's. I think it's pretty. I mean, it's pretty close to final, if you ask me, because the May revise came out in May, right? So that came out last month. So and we're at the deadline now. And they did pass a budget by the deadline, so they didn't break the law, but they still have until, I believe, next week to actually get a deal done with the governor so that he can sign, or he has something he is comfortable signing, right? So that's still got to happen. And what we think will happen is, they'll come to a deal, because that's what they're going to be under a lot of pressure to do.
And what could happen between now and next week?
Well, I'm assuming that there's a lot of conversations going on between the people who are negotiating the budget stuff within the governor's office right now. So that's that's for sure going on, and that is what usually goes on, especially during this last week, right? And again, they are under legal obligation to get this done, I think, by the next week. So we'll see what happens.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right. So let's look at some of these other. Oh, what were you saying, Yamoya?
Yeah, learn something new every day, man. Thanks for that, bro. That's why you're the GOAT.
That is why. So let's take a look at what else is in this budget for immediate relief. $12 billion, largest state tax rebate in American history. 2 out of every 3 Californians will receive a stimulus check of at least $600. Families with kids will receive an additional $500. ITIN flyers will receive an additional $500.
Hey, I like the stuff about, the stuff that we saw in that video. I like the stuff about the rent money. I like the stuff about the traffic fines. I like the stuff about the rebates and the actual, the tax help that's coming to, obviously, a lot of us are low income, right? So, that is going to help a lot of people. But we have to think about this in context, because the federal government also did a stimulus right back in March or April or February, and in that was also more tax help to families, I believe, particularly the earned income tax credit or the low income tax credit, one of those, and that was beefed up by 2 and 3 times, I believe, and then also they made a change where instead of getting it as a tax rebate, you would get it as deposits every month in your bank. So that was a change too, which I think is actually potentially helpful, right? Because instead of waiting for one big thing, you have something that is consistently dropping, right? So keep that in mind too, that there's, on top of what he is proposing here, there is also federal help coming too. And so, and most of this is in response to the stimulus, right? And I mean, in response to COVID-19, right? And we got to think about this, right? There is a lot of money that was created and spent during this huge historic pandemic, right? So when we get people who have questions for us about how much reparations is going to cost and why reparations, how are we going to pay for it, etc., we have really good examples. I'm really happy that Governor Newsom is like talking this specifically about the budget and about where we can be spending, because I want to hear this same kind of talk and I want this same kind of energy when we get to the reparations.
Definitely, definitely. So as far as the renter assistance, we've got is that 5.2 billion, help low income renters pay up to 100% of their back rent, all rent for several months into the future, and utilities. 2 billion relief for past due water and power, gas bills, and 60 million for historic tenant legal aid, which I'm sure a lot of renters will be needing when the moratorium lifts on the 30th of this month. And then the traffic fine forgiveness, 300 million. California will eliminate debt owed for traffic fees and fines. Low-income California's traffic tickets issued between January 1st, 2015 and June 30, 2021.
This is really good.
There's still time if you get a ticket, or if you got one recently, you can get in on this action.
Yeah. Oh yeah, tickets for the next 15 days might be on the house. So I wanted to talk about this real quick. So the traffic fine forgiveness is actually really good, because a lot of the ways they catch us, like and trap us in this poverty, is through fines and fees, right? Like being poor is expensive. Like people don't understand. Like people like if you ever been poor, like like being poor is expensive as hell. Like obviously, right? Like you constantly, like everything is expensive, and like you got on top of this, your being able to sustain yourself being expensive. You have at times fines and fees, and a lot of them are from traffic, driving, all that. Like that is something that really adds up, and usually you don't have the money at the time. So then there's interest, and then there's penalties, and then there's there's fees, right? So like there's all these kind of different things. I think there was some research out of the University of, I believe, Oregon, if I'm not mistaken, or Seattle, where the researchers looked at how many different types of fines and fees can you get hit with, if you poor and low income and you have a certain, type of experience. That, I mean, it was like 9 different types of like charges, like 9 different categories of charges. So fees is one, fines is another. There's just about 9 or so different types of ways according to that research. So this is going to be helpful, and let's take advantage of it. Obviously, sometimes, and we saw this with the Proposition 64 stuff, like with the legalization of marijuana stuff. Like sometimes when you either make something legal that wasn't legal, or forgives some sort of crimes that people did, right? Or in the case of marijuana, you make marijuana legal, and then you say everybody who had a charge can get that off their record. That's great, right? But it actually costs money to get your record looked at and then your charge taken off, right? So in this case, right, I want to be careful that we're looking out for the other hidden costs, right, that we might have to work on also, right? It took the work of some really awesome organizers and some really smart tech people actually to figure out some ways to help people who have marijuana charges actually be able to even know how to take it off, and then actually be able to take it off for free. Okay? So we want to be careful here too. Like when we do this, now that we have that learning, right, we want to be careful and say, all right, is there anywhere else where there's some hidden costs here? Are people going to have to get a legal aid or attorney to get the process started? Is there a process, et cetera?
Yeah, you're right about the fees upon fees upon fees. I know from my daughter out there driving around in San Francisco, a bunch of tickets. And then, when it comes time for registration, you can't get your registration until you pay your tickets. And if you don't do that, car gets towed, and that's an additional fee. So yeah, it's a never ending.
Yeah, if I could just briefly touch on that too. As Kim mentioned about living like in places like San Francisco and Los Angeles, and even in downtown Sacramento, in these large, yeah, definitely just downtown Sacramento, but in these larger urban areas, what often happens is in a lot of these affluent areas, they'll have parking spaces where you'll have, for example, where you have to have some type of what is it called, license or permit to park there, right? So you're trying to find a parking space and you park somewhere in an affluent area and there's nowhere to park, and so you get a huge traffic because a ticket, and then it just spirals down from there. And that especially in Los Angeles, because when you go to downtown and some of these affluent areas, there's like nowhere to park, and you're like stuck with all these tickets. And as Chris was saying, it just spirals down, especially for low income people. So I just kind of wanted just to elaborate on that.
Yep. And if you don't pay that traffic ticket on time, it goes up. So it's just a never ending struggle.
Hey, wait, one thing I want to put in terms, just to close this up. So I want to know also if this applies to like traffic fines and fees that are related to not just driving, but also to public transportation, right? Because I'm from New York, right? So we do public transportation a lot, right? But here in Sacramento, there is a public transportation system, right? You got the light rail, right? You got buses, et cetera. So I used to ride the light rail, right? And you see homeless people get on the light rail, right? And not have no ticket, and then get, caught without having a ticket, get, a fine and a fee, right? And then obviously they don't have a way to pay that, obviously, right? So, and I know there's a program, I believe there's a diversion program here in the city of Sacramento that actually, has some sort of way to, make that better. But I do want to know, does this apply to our brothers and sisters who don't drive, and who use public transportation, or who do drive and also use public transportation?
Right. And that opens up a whole nother thought. Does it apply to fast track? You zipping through the fast track and don't pay, and they send those tickets. Does it apply to that? They might need to bump that traffic budget up a little bit with everything they be hitting people with.
Great points.
Let's see what's...
sorry. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Nah, man, because this is because we're on to something here. So do y'all remember back in Ferguson, right? Back in Ferguson, when I believe it was Mike Brown who got killed, right? And then afterwards, the city blew up and the city was on fire and all that. City turned up, and then there was a study done about like the relationship between the city and the people of Ferguson, and if it was found out that the city was like living off of the traffic fines and fees from Black folks, that was feeding the city budget basically, right? And this is something that and that actually the over policing was happening, and the over policing was bringing in money, right? Bringing, you over police Black folks' neighborhood, right? In the white neighborhood, you see a broken taillight, you might let it go. Our neighborhood, nope. Or we just pulling you over. We just pulling you over. We, nothing, right? We're just gonna pull you over. So think about that too, right? That the city of Sacramento and the state has been feeding also and does have some part of it that comes from, or our budget has some part of it that comes from stuff that happens to poor people, like getting, fines and fees because you can't pay $2 for the light rail, right?
Right, and profiling to get that quota, traffic citation quota. Looks like we lost Moya. He just came back, and while he
Moya, okay, I'm done. By the way, I'm done. I'm totally done on the traffic fines.
We'll take a look at what's going on with the homeless.
Modest commitment to address the issue of homelessness in the state. This is simply without precedent. Put it in perspective, this is a 2-year commitment. Last year, we had an historic budget investment of about $1.3 billion. You can see a multiple of that over the next 2 fiscal years that we're proposing to get 65,000 people off the streets and placed into support. That's significant. 65,000+ placements. In fact, I say plus because it actually is closer to 68,000 based upon our current modeling and analysis. $7 billion building off the successful Home Key, which has become a national model. You may have seen that the Biden administration identified Home Key as a best practice national model. They put up $5 billion nationwide. State of California is committing $7 billion, building off broadly the proposal and the framework that was advanced last year, an historic effort to procure units and to transition people off the streets, sidewalks, and shelters into homes or into units. Our goal is to actually establish a framework and goal, and that's to end family homelessness in the state of California. We actually have some good data. We put out a new database, new data system a number of months ago that allowed us to analyze for the first time databases locally and nationally, and compare and contrast and make a determination and actually have a numeric number that allows us to establish this goal with some confidence that we can achieve the results that we intend. We also
Okay, so more money for the homeless. It's definitely a problem that needs to be addressed, but it seems like they've been throwing tons of money at the homeless, and I haven't seen much improvement, at least not here in Sacramento.
Or Los Angeles at all.
This is a big problem, right? And so if y'all remember, I'm not sure if y'all remember, like a couple of weeks back, not a couple of weeks, excuse me. It was definitely last month, the city of Sacramento did a housing workshop, or at least there was a housing proposal or a housing presentation at one of the city council meetings recently, and I actually was not mad at the kind of things that I was seeing in that presentation, because there were new things. There was first a lot of different kinds of housing options, right? Usually, and I think up until this point, we really haven't been creative enough about how we solve this problem, right? If you talk to the developers, they're going to tell you, oh, we need more housing and we need you to cut the regulation and red tape, and we need less taxes, right? If you talk to the housing advocates, they're going to say we need to build more affordable housing, and yes, in my backyards, and we need to upzone, right? We need to get rid of the single family houses, and only multifamily houses allowed. The state of California actually sued one of its own cities, and I forget which city got sued by I think it was last year, because I believe it's a state mandate that every state in every city or every part of, or every city or local government have, I believe, a certain amount of quote affordable housing. So this is something that is a big deal, and big shout out to Citizen Edge. In terms of demographics, we don't know, or excuse me, I don't know what the homeless rate is for Black folks who descend from U.S. slavery in California. I don't know that, because up until this point, we don't or haven't been collecting data specifically on that group of people. We collect data on, with a bigger category called Black or African American. So, there are numbers for that. Nationally, we do know, right, that Black folks are typically some 40% of, I believe, homelessness and 50% of homeless families, right? And the state of California just announced, and the governor just said just a minute ago, right, that there is now a goal to end family homelessness in the state of California, and it's tragic, right? I mean, it's actually more than tragic. It makes you sick to your stomach to see the kind of things that we see here in the city of Sacramento, right? Like encampments where there are kids living there, and I mean like 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds. Like we've seen that, right? I've seen it, right? So this is out of control, and this is something that it sounds like we're going to put more money into. Kim, you're right. Like we've been throwing money at this, for a long time, and that's not deniable, right? I was impressed though somewhat with what I saw from the presentation that the city council did, and I think we should do either a show on it at some point. Maybe bring Key in, to talk about the housing connection here. But this is something that has to be looked at, I think, more creatively, and I'm not sure we've been as creative as possible. What I saw in that presentation was different options. So there were, obviously we have to build, more, multifamily affordable housing. Obviously, we have to look at how we can serve people who are homeless now in encampments, right? And not move people around like we do and sweep people around like we do, right? With the Sacramento Police Department, right? There were tiny homes, right? There were these different other kinds of tiny homes. There was about 6 or 7 different options, I thought. So I'll stop here, but this is something that I think is probably one of the biggest issues of our time.
Yeah, and hopefully they're fiscally responsible with those dollars and how they spend them. I know I was at a community meeting once, and they were talking about they were spending like $400,000 a month, and it was only helping a very small amount of people. And I'm thinking to myself, they could put them people in houses for bottom houses for the kind of money that they're spending. So hopefully that the money goes to the right places, people in need. All right, so what's in the homeless package here? So the $7 billion home key, $1.75 billion build thousands of affordable homes, 447 million student homelessness, 193 million encampment strategies, and 150 million Project Room Key. Transform public spaces and clean highways, downtowns, commercial corridors, 15,500 jobs, at-risk youth, formerly homeless, revitalization of community arts. So does sound like a good start, and like they're going to be using some of that money to clean up these public spaces, which are becoming pretty dilapidated, some of them.
Yeah, and also create some jobs at the same time. So we have a consistent issue though that I think runs through all of this. Everything we've been talking about so far, right? Every piece of the proposed budget, right? That this is Governor Newsom's proposed ideas, right? We're going to get the final product in less than a week, but everything in here we do have to put in context in terms of, one, the reparations question, right, which we've been trying to do, but two, there's always there's something wrong with how, or something right to some people, right, but something wrong to me about how, and to a lot of people, about how the government's money does not get to Black folks in the way that it needs to, and that is a government problem, right? And that is that's a problem, right? We're talking about $267 billion, or $250 billion worth of money to be spent potentially over the next year, and we have a problem because every year, not this year, not different, we're going to have to work to get this money to Black folks. And I really do want politicians to start actually creating Black agendas, specifically Black agendas. And I actually want to see those in budgets, right? I think that's actually the best place to see them, not right before your re-election or your election, right? Okay, all right, which is when we see it, okay, and then we don't see it again, right? If we see it.
Kim, do you mind putting up that slide again, please? All right. So I guess my question, Chris, and to the chat is, it looks like, so we have this $1.5 billion that's going to at-risk youth, formerly homeless. So I guess my question, Chris, and to the chat is, if we establish or already have established non-for-profit organizations, how can we go about making sure that some of this money is actually distributed to some of those youth programs that are ran by U.S. descendants of chattel slavery, Black people, African Americans?
Yes, it's a good question. So one, as we know, there are a bunch of great nonprofits that do work with youth, right, that are run by U.S. slavery descendants here in California, right? We had the privilege of working with Lorraine Pryor, right, who runs Black Youth Leadership Project here in the city of Sacramento and Elk Grove, right? And actually, it's doing work all across California and across the country, really. So, and big shout out to Black Youth Leadership Project. Actually, they got, I'm gonna give them a little promo here. They have free Black graduation event coming up on, I believe it's this weekend actually, and it's totally free. I believe go to bylp.org to register. It's a celebration for Black students in and across Sacramento and Elk Grove. It doesn't matter what school you went to at all, right? Doesn't matter if you didn't get to walk across the stage, especially if you didn't get to walk and all that, because you know how they treat us, right? This is for you. So make sure you check that out. But BYLP is just one amazing nonprofit, right? And there are a lot of them. So what those nonprofits should be doing and probably will be doing is making sure that they are in contact with the governor's office to get connected to those funds, and making sure that they are connected to their local state senator and local assembly person to make sure that they're connected to get those funds, and making sure that they connected to their local cities and their city councils to make sure that they get connected to those funds. That's what they are probably doing, usually do, and should be doing. And usually it works. I think it works best if you do it in an organized way, right? So if there's not just one of these nonprofits, coming together to, make some of this happen. But I know that there are people who are, whose job this is and who are going to be working on this. Okay.
Yeah, thanks for that, man, because I think one of the things is, as we're going through some of these slides, and we have basically 4 minutes till the hour, and we have quite a bit more. So I don't know if we want to go half or.
Yeah, let's cut it to half, man. Let's do like a part two. Actually, we should do a part two after the budget comes out, like after next week, right? That way we can actually see the final product, see what they actually did, and see where the money is actually, right? And the budget. First of all, always follow the money, right? So the money is where it's at, and the budget is the money. Okay, like we talk about a lot of stuff, but like the budget is the money. So this is stuff that we definitely want to talk about and definitely want to keep you, in the know about. And I do think we should, not make this, too long, and then also come back next week after we get a final product.
Okay. And just so I can clarify and elaborate what I was saying, I think it's also important that we talk about solutions. I know we're reparations and, political education heavy, but it's also very vital that we come out with solutions. And that's why I mentioned that, because for these individual nonprofit organizations, because I know a lot of times in our Black community, we're like, well, we don't know anything. We can't do anything. The government's not going to give us anything. Well, they won't give you anything if you don't set yourself up to receive that money, right? I know we're still fighting for reparations, but at the same time, we still at least need to try to put ourselves in situations while we're working on, reparations to actually set us up. So I know you can probably reach out to Chris, or I know there's probably some other people out there. If you need some help setting up your nonprofit or your profit, because I'm sure there are some requirements to probably receive this money. But at the same time, if this money is available and this is your work, this is your life, then definitely see if we can actually try to set us up, as Chris mentioned, in an organized fashion to do this. So that's why I wanted to point out.
Facts.
And Chris, you mentioned reaching out to your assemblymen and senators. What other recourse do you have if they're not responding? Matter of fact, there was a rental assistance program right here in Sacramento with the Sarah 2 program. I signed up for it, and my application is in perpetual review, and it's been like two months now. And I reached out to Jim Cooper, Assemblyman Jim Cooper, and didn't get a response from his office. And the senator sent them an email too, no response. What do you do if your legislators and lawmakers aren't responding to your emails?
You get organized, and you build power, and you fix it. That's what you do. You find the first thing you do is find other people who are going through the same thing. If you are experiencing what I think we experience all too often, right? Which is a government that doesn't work in the way. So, right, like there's the law, right? And the law creates this budget, right? And then there's obviously money. But again, we go back to to what I was just saying. How do you actually get it to Black people, right? And that's a question not just of from the top down money flowing, but also like, can you actually can people access it at the point of sale or the point of contact, right? And are these things set up in a way that they are easy to access and easy to connect to? That's important too, right? So the people who are working on this are probably thinking about, and hopefully they're thinking about, ways to make whatever kinds of spending happens in the final budget product that we see next week actually be accessible and easy to connect with. That's what I hope they're working on. But for people who are interested, there are groups, there are organizations, there are people whose job it is to make sure that the budget is what the people of California want and need. So another thing you can do, in addition to finding other people who are having similar issues or along those lines, and in that process, connect to groups and organizations whose job this is and who've already organized and said, hey, we want to take this on. Those groups probably need your help. Okay. So connect to one of those groups.
I think the ARC team needs to take a little field trip down to the Sarah 2 office, a little pull up summer action, and let them know we waiting on that check. But okay, so we're going to end it here with homelessness. We'll pick up next or after the budget. Do you know when that's going to happen next week, Chris?
I think we have until the 20th. So I think we have until this weekend actually. So I want to say we'll see something next week, and stay tuned to ETM for all your California budget plus California reparations task force updates.
All right. With that, see you next time, fam, and have a happy and safe and jubilant Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth.